Okay, so what we're going to work on today is something called the destructive or overcoming cycle and the constructive or the generating cycle. You write it like this. xiang, sang, or some people write sang with an sh. S-E-N-G or S-H-E-N-G is like shufel and sufel. Depends on where you are in China, where it comes from. But it basically means generating or creating or creative cycle, right? And then alternately there is 相克, which means overcoming. I don't like to say destructive cycle because destructive cycle oftentimes gives you the idea that it's destroying where it's bad, like a positive and negative. There's no positive and negative. They don't happen one then the other. They're happening simultaneously. So overcoming or the checking. Sometimes you can get it called the checking cycle. And so it gets written in the 5 elements. So everything you do within Tao is scale. The overall picture is Tao, and that's the 0. And 0 makes the 1, which is the Wu Ji. In Tao, there are no things. There's no yin, there's no yang, there's no things. So there's just Tao. And in Tao, there's no things, which is everything undifferentiated, but not even that. It's beyond the observer, beyond everything. Like particles and waves. It's still just waves, no particles. And then it becomes the 1 as soon as it becomes an observer. That's the 1, and that's the Wu Ji. And Wu Ji is the limitless void, limitless vast emptiness. It's not empty as in there's nothing in it, it's everything undifferentiated. And the Tao passes through it and creates the Taiji. So Taiji, yin and yang, are a really, really big scale. So everything, if you look at it, is a very, very general. And then you go from the Taiji to the 3 treasures, Sanbao, and the 3 treasures, heaven, man, and earth, it's just a smaller scale. And then you go to the 4 stages, the 4 levels. The 4 levels are the Wei, Qi, Yin, and Shui, or which are used in Chinese medicine. Or you can say fire, air, earth, and water. Now, the thing about those levels are, you say, well, those are Western. Your minds don't understand Chinese very well. You are not going to put you through 10 years of sinology, Chinese language, Chinese cultures, geopolitical and socioeconomic history, just so I can get into you the way that their minds thought 1900 years ago, because these are conceptual ideas. But then you go from there to the 5 elements. And so Xiang Sang Xiang Ku work on the 5 element model, which is, again, another more specific. Then it goes 6 stages, 7 treasures, 8 phenomena, or the Bagua, and the 9 methods. We're going to focus today on these. And the reason why is to master these systems of thinking, these paradigms of thinking, you must start in the middle here, which is easiest, and it's done with a 5-point star. So, the 5-point star, you start here with wood. Wood is the creative principle, is represented with the liver. It is the color green, it is the dragon, and it is the ethereal soul known as the Hun, the highest self, the one that you want to imprint your consciousness or your yi on. And wood creates fire. The fire is the heart, it's the Shen, it's red, and it's the phoenix. The Shen is the lifetime from lifetime you, not your identity, not who your consciousness is thinking right now. That's not Shen. Shen is your immortal self. When you start practicing your alchemies, it's your Shen that you want to get to meet, direct experience. And that creates earth, which is your yi. This is your logos, your logic. This is the consciousness you're using right now to watch this video. And it's color gold. It's a golden eagle. And it's the spleen in Chinese medicine. Then there's metal. Metal is the lungs. It's Po. It's your corporeal soul, the physical self here. The corporeal soul is Po. It's the color white, and it's the tiger. This is the animal self, the instinctual self. This is the part of you that responds in the fight or flight. Po is really, really useful, but needs to be tamed, so it'll lower our base self. And then the metal brings forth water. Water is the kidneys, it's the tortoise or the snake. It's also black or dark blue. It's the divine will, known as the Zhi. I'm going to spell this out. Z-H-I. Everything we do in Taoism is to tonify our Zhi. So it's also a place where we store our Jing, or essence, in the body. And so, so this is the 5 elements. So I'm going to draw using colors, because one of my really good Taoist brothers taught grad school, but also elementary school. He says if you teach them exactly the same way, you'll get really good results. So color time, like picture pages or something. Okay, so water creates wood. Wood creates fire. Fire creates earth. Earth brings forth metals. Metal brings forth water. Some people say, can you explain those to me? I don't understand. Water creates wood. Without water, you can't nourish and grow the plants or the wood. Wood then has to be fed into the fire to create the fire. Fire makes ash, which is earth. Earth houses the metals, the minerals, and the metal brings forth water. And people get a lot jacked up on this one because they say, how does metal bring forth water? Simple. You ever put a spoon outside and watch it have condensation, or your car has condensation? Because the cold contracts and it brings the moisture out of the air, and the metal's the one that collects it. But really specifically, you can think of it in the ancient days when this came out, is you don't keep water in a well if the well doesn't have the right minerals. Because with the earth by itself, the water just goes right through. But if the metal's there, the proper minerals, it'll hold the water, and that's what creates the well. So that's the generating cycle. Now, there's a checking cycle that's happening simultaneously. So fire checks metal, right? Fire slags metal. Metal chops wood. Wood pierces the earth. You can say this in a couple of ways. One, when trees grow up, it depletes the soil. And the tree basically takes the soil and everything into itself. That's one way. Another way is if you have a shovel or something and you basically use it to move the earth or the dirt around, the wood overcomes the earth in that way. Earth dams up water, right? Sandbags. And then water checks fire. So the xiang is the generating, the xiang is the checking. And they cannot happen apart from each other. So while water is creating wood, it is also checking the fire. Because if you just create the wood, then the fire becomes exponential. But if you create the wood and check the fire simultaneously, you have a balanced system where it's creating and keeping its repercussions, or keeping the consequences of its actions in check. And this is something that the Tao always does, is it may act, but it will always think of what's the consequences of this action and keep it in check as well, so that it doesn't have an out of bounds thing, because every decision molds a destiny. So if we keep creating wood, we choke up the world with all of these trees. And then we make ourselves a tinderbox for fire. But if we have enough water to make the wood, we also have enough water to keep the fire from raging, because it's not easy to light a tree that's alive, right? Because it's full of water. It'll steam, it won't actually burn. So there's always a system going on. And so I want you to really think about this, because in Feng Shui's terminology, fire represents the passionate, the creative, the passionate, the active, the spiritual, new opportunities, new horizons. The earth represents your stability, your neutrality. It represents your abundance, your physical health. The metal represents order. It represents good humor, character. It represents putting things in logical steps. Water represents stillness, reflection, cleanliness, introspection. The wood represents imagination, creativity, and flexibility, the ability to move and grow with things. And so when you put all of these systems together and you work with all of these systems, everything you do in your life can be put into one of these categories, and it must be balanced with everything else. So if you look at your birth chart and you say, okay, myself, my year is a yang wood. My personal element is a yin fire. So I'm a self-feeding nuclear reactor, right? I have a little bit of energy in me, just a little bit. And so because of that, I'm over on the scale. So I don't really like micromanaging. I really don't like plans. I really don't like those things. I can create my own stability, but kind of creating stability for other people who choose not to be stable, it's not really my thing. There's a lot of go in my life, and when it comes time to do the water thing, it's not something I can just stop and do. It's something I've got to prepare myself for, just because of the nature of my personal element. And so when you look at these things, you can feng shui your life, you can feng shui your business, you can feng shui your plans for the day, and it's about knowing thyself. Okay, so we're going to use this a lot, and we're going to talk about this a lot, but I wanted you to see this. I wanted you to watch this as many times as necessary till you really get, when I say to you, well, that's a lot of wood, and you say, what is wood, what is wood? I need you to really understand it, because a lot of lessons are extrapolated by the creating and generating cycle. Now, when you deal with the four elements of fire, air, water, and earth, when you deal with those, in a solid, liquid, gas, and sort of transformation, you're not dealing with the creative and destructive cycles. You're dealing with levels of existence that they represent, or states of being, right? A solid state, a liquid state, a vaporous state, and a transformative state. And so we really need to differentiate. Don't, just because you're seeing elements, don't mean they're the same thing. They're states of being versus generating and destruction. So when you look at your life, when you look at things that you're doing, I want you to sort of look at where you stand and where you are. I'm going to put a link to this so you can do your own birth chart. You basically put in your date and time and all that kind of stuff, and it'll tell your elements. The year you were born is your element, your year element, your fuel element. So if you were born with the years ending in 0 or 1, let's see, 1, then fire, then earth. So then you're water. No. Metal. Metal is 0 and 1. If you're the last two digits, the last digit of your year is either a 2 or a 3, then it's water. If it's 4 or 5, it's wood. If it's 6 or 7, it's fire. If it's 8 or 9, it's earth. But that's your fuel. In other words, that's where you draw from in order to perpetuate or fund whatever you're doing. So for me, being wood, my year is being very creative, imaginative, coming up with solutions, becoming resourceful. However, my personal element, that's the day you were born. That is, for mine, is fire. And so in that particular case, I'm always about action, about doing, about going forward. But it's a yin fire, not a yang fire, blazing out of control, manic, but more like a candle, one that you can see by, one you can reason by, one that you can understand by. So reasonable action, informed action, that's my personal element, that's just my nature. And then the earth, the imagination and possibilities feed that. For somebody who's water as your fuel, you'll be more inclined to, I need some time alone, I need to think about this, I need to be still and sort of clear my head or get some space. And let's say metal was your day. And so let me organize my thoughts. I need to be organized, or I can't do this. My house needs to be organized. I can't start this new project, or I can't cook this dinner if the kitchen's not clean. Knowing your element, knowing yourself, knowing how you work best, then puts you in the position to be successful every time, because you can take effective action. Okay? All right. I've taken enough of your time. I want you to pay attention to this. From there, try to reason this out and then do your birth chart, and we'll talk about it either at your next check-in or the next time I talk to you. Okay? All right, let's talk to you later.